Hello once again to everyone out there on the liveactionanime.org forums. I am Thrash Till Death, and unfortunately Blood the Last Vampire has had its UK release date delayed to July the 26th. Bit of a disappointment being 2 weeks late, so just on a whim I thought I'd make that a theme of today's review: disappointment. Is there any experience in entertainment quite so deflating as seeing a trailer for a film and following it for months or even years, and thinking it looks like absolutely the be-all and end-all of everything that's good, and then you see it and eventually the film just turns out to be the same sort of piece of tripe that cinemas have been churning out since cinema began? So that's pretty much the experience I had with Yukihiko Tsutsumi's 20th Century Boys. Now, I mentioned this one on the podcast several months ago, I think, alongside Sun Goshen and Live Action Vegeta, when I said that I thought it was going to be one of the best films this year. I thought it was going to be up there on par with Watchmen, and I finally had the opportunity to buy it and finally get around to seeing it just a few weeks ago, and unfortunately I was sorely, crushingly disappointed. It's adapted from a manga made by Naoki Urasawa, and it follows the story of a man named Kenji Endo, who, along with a group of friends in elementary school, came up with a sort of comic book / doomsday scenario in which they sort of whimsically predicted that the world would end in the start of the new millennium, and they started coming up with all these strange ideas for how it would carry out. And for 30 years later, Kenji is now an adult. He's living at home with his mother and he's helping run their convenience store, and all of a sudden he starts to hear news of disasters taking place across the globe, and they seem to follow the same pattern that they predicted would happen in their infancy. And at the heart of it all these viral outbreaks and these giant mechs attacking cities, there seems to be this secret organisation, a sort of popular cult, and at its head is a mysterious masked figure known only as Friend. And he wears a symbol on his face that's identical to the symbol, the flag, that Kenji and his friends came up with in their youth. Now, all this seems like fairly compelling stuff, I'm sure, and I dare say it was really compelling in the original manga. But on a certain level, that's just the problem with 20th Century Boys. See, the 20th Century Boys manga, I haven't read it, but from what I've heard, it's an extremely huge, sweeping story. It covers decades on its timescale. It contains hundreds of characters. It's absolutely hundreds and hundreds of pages long. And it deals with absolutely vast webs of intrigue and character development over a period of several years. Now, from what I've heard, the film, which is actually the first in a trilogy of films, and this first one is 140 minutes long, should give you an idea of the scale that they're aiming for. It tries to replicate the manga almost to the letter, from what I've heard. But the problem with that is that graphic novels are unlike film in that they aren't bound by the same sort of temporal constraints, I suppose. You can read a graphic novel and you can dwell on a single panel or a single frame for as long or as little time as you see fit. So that allows graphic novels to sort of have more fragmented narratives, more plot lines running in tandem than you can have in a film, and still maintain narrative coherency. 20th Century Boys, the film, doesn't seem to understand that. It gives us 140 minutes of incredibly amounts of meandering, and for massive periods of time it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, and when stuff finally does happen, it's over in a flash. You seem to be missing massive plot points, massively significant stuff. It just flashes past you, and you don't have any sort of indication of what event is supposed to be significant or what you're supposed to be paying attention to more than anything else, because the film doesn't know what to edit out in favour of its own medium. In trying not to compromise the original story, it ends up unintentionally compromising everything. So that's the first of its problems. the second would probably be, because I had these same problems with Zack Snyder's adaptation of Watchmen, you know? It had an awful lot of plot lines running in tandem, and it didn't sort of build up tension the way a film's supposed to, and it tries to get away with tricks you can only really get away with in graphic novels. The problem with 20th Century Boys is that it, unlike Watchmen, which is actually a very technically accomplished film, and on that level still sort of an achievement, 20th Century Boys is very woodenly acted for a start. It's all the characters seem very sort of uncomfortable in their roles. They seem awfully artificial in their expression of emotion. But the real crushing blow for the film is that it's very sort of boringly directed. When I talked about Cass Aaron a while back, one of my major praises of that film was the fact that it was so visually audacious and flamboyant, and it was unafraid to do stuff that was sort of really out there and really grabbed the viewer's eye. And 20th Century Boys, which is a pretty zany story, it's pretty out there, it makes the mistake of being very plain in what it shows the viewer. It seems very, I don't know, very understated, even. It doesn't go in for any sort of cityscapes, it doesn't go for many establishing shots. All the sort of shots are very localized, fairly small scale. Even up to the very end, everything seems to have been conducted. Even the production values, this is ostensibly one of the biggest film projects in Japanese history. The three films have a cumulative budget of 6 billion yen, which is equivalent to 60 million US dollars. But it doesn't really look it. I mean, a lot of the effects in this film that only sort of feature very sporadically, and when they are there, they aren't all that convincing. And it makes the mistake of showing us really extraordinary events, almost in a sort of documentary sort of style, and it just fails to really leave an impression on the viewer. On top of that, it goes in for massive time skips at times. There's even, and potential spoiler warning here, about 2/3 of the way into the film, there's a 3-year time skip where events absolutely flash past, and there's a huge paradigm shift in the narrative. But it just sort of happens arbitrarily without any proper attention being drawn to it. And that's just not good filmmaking. That's not the way to treat your audience. You're not giving them sort of the storytelling the medium demands. So all in all, I really can't recommend 20th Century Boys to anyone. If you like the manga, stick with the manga. I haven't read it, but I dare say it would be better than this. This is just a film that has all the hallmarks of an adaptation gone wrong. So, I'm sorry to say it, I really felt let down by this film, but I can't bring myself to rate it higher than 1.5 stars on the 4-star scale. Well, that's about all I have for now. I'll be back in possibly a few days or so to bring you my review of Transformers, and not long after that for Blood the Last Vampire. So I've got plenty of stuff planned for the immediate future. As for now, stay tuned for more good live-action anime, and don't watch the crappy ones that we've seemed to have been stuck with so far in 2009. I'll see you in a while. I'm out. Thrashed till death. Goodbye.